We are live at this Intuitive Care Farm Stand, courtesy of Intuitive Public TV. Welcome to my colleague, Johanna Otigum. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Megan Elizabeth. It's so awesome that we get to do this together. Intuitive Care Farm Stand. Wow.
Dun, dun, dun. What is intuitive care, and what is a care farm, and what is a farm stand?
Cool. I like all these questions. Let's explore them together.
How do I make you the main person? Oh, like
Aha!
that. I'm still learning how to be a producer.
Yes, part of this is play with learning how to make the tech more awesome. Yeah. Intuitive care, care farming, care farm stand. They all like flow together very nicely. I kind of want to start with what is a care farm.
Yeah, let's talk about care farming first.
So care farming does have a lineage, which we can mention also. But basically, care farming is being in relationship on the land and with people who need care and are giving and receiving care with each other. So it's certainly distinct from the institutional models of care, although you could loosely call a farm an institution, I suppose. But we're kind of talking about something different where I think the basic model is that people have the opportunity as carees, as people who need care and receive care, to be involved in the economics of relationship with the land and other human beings and so on. So it's definitely a different model from, say, a medical model or something like that.
And it's very inclusive of plant communities and communities of other living creatures, in addition to human beings, and the relationships between all of these living beings and Earth.
Yeah, which intuitive care, I mean, there's so many things we could say about intuitive care and all the models, and practices and tool sets and resources that we've been developing. But that basic thing of relationship and communication and those things being supported and being treated as primary and important. So that feels really good. So, care farms as the model exists in the world mostly. We want to see it move. We see a lot of potential to do to create these residential places for people to recover and receive care and so on that are more holistic in so many different ways. So just going back to the original care farm model, these are generally working farms. If you go and look up care farms on the internet, you're going to find working farms that are doing CSAs or some other form of vegetable production. And there's quite a bit of variation as far as how much the people being cared for, the disabled people, for instance, involved are actually supported to participate. And it's pretty rare in the existing models that disabled people are included in decision making about the economics and the business of things. So that's certainly a shift in the models that we're developing as well.
Yeah, that decision making in terms of each person's own actual well-being being really a priority, and how we are in relationship with one another, how we can support one another, how we have opportunities to collaborate fruitfully with one another, which is something that in many places has really been lost, and we need more practice of it.
Yeah.
Johanna and I were talking a lot about the farm stand model. Maybe you would like to say some things about Yellow Rocket Sanctuary and your conception of farm stands as we are bridging it to this digital version today.
Sure, yeah. I mean, it's been fun to play with and just see if my brain can kind of wake up and connect today with these ideas, because certainly I can talk about the farm stand I'm developing here at the sanctuary, that I'm hoping to launch at the end of next month when the weather's really warm and plants can be left outside and so on. So I've got a long driveway and I'm going to set up a little beautiful stand, where people can just stop by and so on, and pick up things in a way that's easy for me. So as a disabled person, I'm like, if people can come to me or somebody else can bring my things to market, it just, access is such a big deal, right? To have people support that, or to find ways that are really doable for my own energy levels and other needs. So, I've got a table, I've got an umbrella, I've got a cash box tied to a rock, right? So people can put in. So that's kind of like the physical model. Signage, right? Like kind of letting people know that we exist, maybe going online and inviting people. I might do an open house, that kind of thing. And then, it's a little node of connection, right? Like I don't want everybody driving up my driveway every day and, it's just not going to work for things, but having a little place where I can interface with people asynchronously even is really fabulous.
Like
So that's
this
one of
right
the nice things. Yeah. That's one of the nice things about having a farm stand versus going to farmer's market, is it can happen asynchronously. Now I'm going to go down there every day, water plants, bring fresh veggies, update things and so on, and I'll be tending it. But it really works for me to not have to sit there all day or try to figure out a ride to market and haul all the stuff and deal with the timing and all of that. So there's that simplicity part. So
yeah
I'm also really interested just to play with the concept of doing a farm stand. Like here we are, actually doing a live farm stand, a little bit more like farmer's market. We're here in person, right? People could stop by and, make comments or ask questions and that kind of thing. But yeah, so, I mean, I'm not sure exactly where to go with that right now, but I do, feel a lot into, like, I feel very connected to just how centered the Intuitive Network is on creating relationships that also include different forms of economics, right? So we're paying attention to the economics, the energy flows, the relational flows, with both monetary and non-monetary currencies, too. So the relationship energy is what we're focusing on today, and what is intuitive care and what are care farms. So I'm like, okay, so how do we translate this thing that's usually so physical, where it's like, here's all our wares on display at our farm stand, right? So, and intuitive, I think we could posit that a lot of our work is very dialogue based, and we really focus on communications bridging with people. So just to kind of play with the model of like, how do we do a farm stand online on a live stream and say, here's what we have to offer. And of course, the whole intuitive model is, it may not be what you expect. It may be kind of nonlinear. But if you hang out and pay attention and vibe with us, good things can happen.
It's an immersive experience.
Right.
Like
right.
going to a farmer's market is an immersive experience. Like wandering through a food forest is an immersive experience.
Mm-hmm. So even if people just come to drive up the road and stop at the end of my driveway at my farm stand, it's a little micro experience. Like they're pausing in their driving and they're taking a moment to explore what's there on the table. They may notice other things. And then, at a certain point, there may be moments where we invite people in to take a walk around the land. I've thought about that actually, like making a sign as that points to where the trail is around the creek and saying, hey, if you're stopping by, feel free to take a walk while you're here, take some photos, you know. I like that
I
idea.
want to call out two aspects of this that are so important to our approaches, to our meandering through these resources. One of them is the story of it that we are all sharing together, that we are all participating in, that we are all experiencing moment to moment. And the other part is the somatics of it, the living creature of our bodies, where, you know, many people, and I mean, I think all of us have experienced in some way being separated from our bodies, or like being, my experience over many years was of being squeezed out the top of my head and not being able to deepen down into my body. And especially when recently we've been practicing somatics together, and with the fast, we have an increasing group practice of somatic experiencing that is massively interconnected with everything else that we're doing, everything else that we're encountering. So when I am describing the intuitive network to people who aren't yet familiar with it, and I describe a lot of diverse details, a lot of layers, different kinds of experiences that people have. It's not simple. It's not succinct necessarily, although we do strive. But the story that we're all experiencing and the somatic nature of that experiencing, when we anchor those two things, I mean, to deepen into the body and into the narrative of a moment to moment experience, exploring a food forest, exploring a farm stand with many different kinds of produce, perhaps, or other kinds of products that have been handcrafted, and made with care. And you know, the singing of sacred songs while making uh, things that care for the body, things that soothe and help the body and nourish the body, which I know is something that you do at Yellow Rocket quite a bit. All of those things that we can convey, not just through experiencing, but through sharing the nutrients of it in person, wherever we can. And if we can't quite make it to being in person, we have this way of connecting on our Intuitive Public TV simulti-stream and giving people the opportunity to, in some way, interact with our bodies and come to know us better as people, which is such an important part of exploring farm stands. Getting to talk to the people and know who's growing your food, who's growing your medicine, who's filling little jars and pots and containers with salves and tonics, and you know, all of these things that we want to have around our living spaces so that we feel really supported. Who made those things? Who is it that is caring for us? And this is part of care farming. As I mean, you have taught me so much about care farming in the years you've been in the network.
Oh, this is so delightful. Yes. I mean, I'm feeling into, I'm enjoying the recognition of how we enter into each other's worlds a little bit through an entry point like a farm stand. And we may, you know, like there's opportunities to maybe come in deeper, but it's a starting place. We're not like throwing everybody in a spaceship together and saying good luck, right? Like they're all in it together. So those entry points, and how the story, we may not even have words or context for the story someone else is living in, but they start to relate and connect, and the world can open up and exploration can happen and connection can happen. And yes, you know, the earth of like, I know who grew this, I know who made it. that we make ourselves available in a relational way to be seen and known. And we have needs around that, both for it to happen at all more in our lives, but also for that to be something that is nonviolent, that's doable. I'm not sure what to say about all of that, right? But that's accessible to us, or even safe enough for us to be interacting with. So those entry points, so beautiful. But yeah, the story, right? I think that this is a key piece in, like, the dream, the story nutriments, which we talk a lot about in the network, that people may not realize how important those things are. Like the context that we tell a story about ourselves or another person, the way that we're carrying the stories, the way we think, things all interrelate. That's what a story is. It's like relating through time, or a snapshot of a moment, a description of something that's happening. That, I mean, a story is kind of broad, right? Like, we don't think of stories or only this or only that. Like, many, many different aspects, layers, dimensions may be a part of that story, or different intersections, as we talk about a lot. But starting to meet each other and relate. And then, I just see like the energy of like, oh, I'm coming closer, or I'll stop back next week and we'll have another conversation. So that feels really beautiful. And so, like, when ideas that are really needed and good may be new to other people, right? So that, like, sort of letting people get an idea and then opportunities to learn more about something, right? So I think a lot more about outreach than I do about marketing, for example.
Yeah.
Right? Because I want to make a connection, and I'm not trying to demand that someone do it a certain way, or that we have to meet in person, right? I've become very comfortable with, like, I can convey information at my farm stand by putting a flyer there for people to read too.
Right.
So, there's actually a lot that we can do. So, and I think that speaks to, like, the intuitive tool sets of, like, we may not see all the little potential increments of relating and other kinds of action that are available to us. So I've had some really interesting, community energy exchanges lately, that if we want to spend time on that on the live stream today, I think it'd be pretty interesting. Like like basically where people with disabilities or other who may or may not be out about their disabilities are meeting, they're trying to get something done, and they hit barriers and then don't stop and give up. So, I mean, I think that's just like the core of our model in so many ways. And it's all the things that we've done to survive when we hit barriers, walls, all kinds of things throughout this whole journey. Yeah. So
I was explaining to a friend earlier today, what is metafiction? What is the value of metafiction? And when we find such profound results from dreaming together and saying, what could happen next? What is the next page we would like to write of this story? The imaginal world is the roots of the real factual world. The factual world emerges from what we think and feel and imagine and dream together, what we anchor in story together. And we were talking in Scott Perry's community call earlier today about the stories that we have for ourselves about any of our experiences, about experiences of suffering, about experiences of triumph, about any number of things that happen. The stories, the meaning that we ascribe to it, which we actually do have a lot of charge of. There's a lot we can do to choose our stories about what we're experiencing. It can completely change the experience. It makes nutrients available from that experience that we might never have otherwise. And so one of the things that we do a lot in the network is we discuss frames, and we travel through frames. We travel from frame to frame, and we try this on, and we go, how does this feel? Is this working? No, that's not quite right. Let's try this other thing. Let's tell a different story about it. Let's see how that changes the whole landscape. Because when we practice that together, not only are we repairing relational neurology, which is the crux of so many things, but we're regenerating our physical realities. We're building the material of our bodies, and then we can affect our environments in really powerful ways by dreaming and telling stories together. So metafiction, are we in fiction? Are we factual? Is there a difference?
Yes, absolutely. And there's some great things about metafiction and story being on our Substack, which you're seeing the banner go on the bottom of the screen there. There's a lot of great material there. Thank you, Megan Elizabeth, for making so much of that happen. Yeah, so metafiction. I mean, I think a lot of people who meet extremity, or extremity meets them in one way or another, not only do we get pushed out of the stories we grew up in, and they simply like do not fit and do not contain, they become almost unsurvivable for a lot of people. Sure, but also describing extremity is something that, I don't know, it sort of feels like calling, we're not just calling it that. We're having a practice with metafiction, and the practice is around metafiction, so that we don't have to put pressure on people to agree or believe. Right. And there's this just like connects to so many things about what's happening in the world right now. And that we need the space, not trying to, I'm not trying to make a point about what you should do or not do. But I think that there's a real need and benefit to being able to explore and to play with frames. I also, while you were talking, I was just like, and sometimes we have the experience of like, there's so many frames, like too, that there's a lot of choice. So it's different than like, yes, no, black, white, right? So, and a lot of people are exploring somatics, which is a really liminality kind of based practice of like, what's connecting to this sensation that I'm having. And so we start to build, and that includes the subtle realms. It also can, includes more material things that we get to explore together. So yeah, an entry point into each other's stories. We're not trying to force each other to decide this is right and that's wrong and this is true and not true. And I just sort of wanted to just mention that as a baseline, because so much of our work, I mean, we're called the Intuitive Network, so it should be kind of inherent, but I wanted to give some voice to that just different way of connecting with things. And like, there's points where like I'm still going through next thresholds, even though I've crossed through very many and been transformed by them. But it's like, oh, like I want to keep one at bay, or I don't want to enter into it. And I may end up, finding my way to relating with something. And I guess what I want to say about that is I have a more like peaceful and nourishing experience when I'm not trying to fix it. And this is very true when we're working with, when we're doing care work, when we're doing care magic, when we're doing care farming, there's this emergent quality to exploring. From the somatic realms, there's permission to have whatever experience you're having, and to explore rather than pick a direction and put your will toward it. That kind of thing. I don't know.
Well, yeah, but also we all, it seems like it's everywhere. We all have these influences that really want us to make knee-jerk decisions about how we feel about something. a lot of us don't know how we feel. And a lot of people will say that they feel a particular way and never really feel into how the body really feels. We were talking about exploring experience in the last few minutes or so. I was thinking about going to an arts performance of some kind, like going to hear an orchestra, or going to some sort of dance performance, or like there are lots of different things. And it's like, what is the value of going in and making a relatively short-term judgment about how you feel about that experience, and what is the value of just having the experience and listening to the body's experience of that, whatever it is, and letting it be an unfolding process of what we learn from it. When we have all of our different groups on Telegram Messenger, let me put the banner up while I talk about it, if I can find it. It's like a ticker or something like that. I bet I have one. Here it is. Oh, I did it. I hit the button. Well, I'm gonna hit that button too. Okay, there we go. On Telegram Messenger, everyone is invited to come find us at t.me/communityipr. That's our public chat on Telegram. And it's the gateway to many, many, many different groups and channels and chats that we have on Telegram. And one of the things about particularly our public channels on Telegram, people look at them sometimes and they go, well, what does this mean? This link was posted, or this item was forwarded. And sometimes people say, well, I feel threatened by that particular thing, or I'm uncomfortable with that particular reference. What are you aligning with that? Are you posting it because you're endorsing that? And what we have to explain is that in order to repair neurological function, in order to help people recover from very challenging traumatic experiences and very compounded injuries, people need to be able to explore conversationally in a safe space, especially if it's hard to say very much about the thing at first. So what we do a lot in our notes on our public channels and in our private spaces and all around the network, we're always bringing up some little thread and maybe not jumping to say very much about it at first, maybe just putting it there and just kind of noticing in our bodies, what do we feel about that? Because we're very actively making safe spaces for anyone who is present to have their experience. We strive to be patient with one another, and we try not to jump to conclusions about what people mean, because it can take a lot of time to communicate about certain things. But when we have that practice of just considering, what is the experience I'm having about a particular thing, we get to discover so much more. We get to learn so much more about those experiences. Now we may decide, oh, that makes me uncomfortable, and here's why. Or maybe I need a separate space to listen to my body and dialogue with someone I really trust, and see, well, why am I feeling that way? Maybe I can verbalize it. Because as we grow our capacity to verbalize how we are feeling about different things, challenging things or wonderful, nourishing things, things that make us really happy, things that we feel manipulated by, things that feel jarring or nightmarish. There are so many different kinds of experiences that people have. And if we have a practice of just being present, Arnold Mindell would say, sitting in the fire,
Yeah.
we find out things that we would never find out otherwise. And instead of cutting ourselves off from that experience, we can create the conditions, is a phrase that you introduced us to.
Yes.
We're creating the conditions to really learn from our experiences together and to respectfully dialogue with ourselves and one another about it. And so, like, for me, arts and music is a really big part of practicing that, but also exploring the natural world and exploring the ways that we share our skills and vocations with one another. Getting to sit at the farm stand with somebody who's making art or making music or showing what they grew or what they mixed together and have put out for sale or for trade. This is there's a fundamental basis of human relationship in that is so powerful, and it's healing. It heals the body to come into contact with it.
Yes. Yes. Thank you so much for that. Oh, so much. Okay. I have lots of stimulations from that. So, we talk a lot about increments in a practical way of slowing things down. So, we haven't talked a bunch about the horrible things in the world right now, but like all of the work that we're doing, it's such a contrast to what we're seeing, where people have kind of had their world really narrow, or they never grew up in a world that was expansive, that supported creativity and relationships. And so all of these things, they may expand in a micro way, they may expand outward in a big way, it may be some connection, but rather than having to decide, like so many survivors have to decide, like, I'm going to invest in this uncertainty over here, or I'm going to get the heck away from this other thing over here. And that we start to have more options, which really mirrors like how I think about trauma healing, as like it's either or, it's all or nothing. And then as we start to connect, we start to be able to do more. We start to be able to interact with other things without having them, shut us down or so on. And we have to make really wise discernments about how we're interacting with different violent things in the world, right? Like everyone has to make choices about that, but survivors for sure, right? Like and a lot of people have neurological injury, some form of brain damage happening. And so like these tool sets are life-saving, but they can apply to everything that's like not life or death as well. And they really are an answer, a complex relational answer to where we're seeing people get cut off from each other, where we're seeing people get pushed out of their own relating with themselves, or it's come to a crux point that they weren't able to have meaningful, sustaining relationships that made sense, rather than like, we're all so conditioned to move fast, to make decisions fast, to have boundaries, all these different things that are relevant, but like the context is so skewed and things seem so chaotic and all of that. So it's a very soulful thing for me to do the dreaming about care farming, and then to take the steps to say, I want to talk about land-based sanctuaries for survivors. I want to physically see these develop in the world, and for more and more people to have access to healthcare that is truly life-affirming, relational, that doesn't say if you're sick, you can't participate economically, that kind of thing.
Wow. So, that all on its own is such a set of topics.
Definitely. And very, very key in how, very, very key in how we're taking the existing model of care farming and saying, okay, well, that's great, but we need to also include this piece of people being, it's the difference between infantilizing disabled people and the dignity of saying, hey, you're a stakeholder in this. We want you to be at the table making decisions. And also we want your beautiful, amazing creativity to be part of the design that we're building together. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. One thing I will just bring in here is that there are all of these really important discussions going on in different spaces about work that has not been valued in the economic structures that we've all come up in, where there are people doing forms of work that are crucial to life, that we do not all survive if people do not do those forms of work, but often those are not even considered forms of work. When we're talking about soft skills, that's often what we're talking about. When we're talking about relationship building and trust building and crafting a welcoming community, caring for the family, caring for the community body, there are a lot of things, emotional labor, relational integrity, collaborative fluency, attuned presencing, like there are a lot of things that people do that have to happen for bodies to be alive, for bodies to be healthy and strong, that have not been rewarded economically in most of our lives and experiences. And when that's the case, we really do have to shift the economics. And we talk a lot about intuitive economic for that reason.
Yeah. Beautiful. Wow, this is so rich. There's so many things that connect to these dialogues, and we're relatively used to that. Like this connects to that. It's apophenic, if anybody wants to get into some fun words.
Should I put apophenic on the screen so that people know what that? Let's see. Am I going to spell it? APOPHENIC.
Yeah.
Apophenic.
Now, if you look up apophenia on the internet, it's gonna give you like pathology language for that. But I claim the idea of apophenia as like seemingly things that other people might not connect are connected. And they are, because we're all in a great web of interrelationship. So we talked about the human and non-human, but we're talking about beyond that too. So ancestors, the unseen, the other world, the living lifeness that is beyond the physical too.
Human and not human. Yeah. I think was the bit that was garbled a little bit because my noises keep coming out of my mouth.
Because we're excited about this.
It is exciting. I want to mention also, like, there are a bunch of influences through all our lives and generations previous that have essentially pathologized ideas of certain kinds or creative expressions of certain kinds, where if you find yourself in a situation where your body needs to express itself or needs to recognize connectivity, and it's being pathologized in your environment, that can be life-killing. And I'm not using that as a euphemism. I mean, it actually kills living beings for that to happen. And, there are lots of subjects like that that we encounter all the time.
Yeah, like how our vital life energy flows are at best disrupted. And many, many worse things are happening in the world to very, very many people. And so it's interesting how radical and game changing it is to just simply like start exploring somatics and intuition, and just like making more inquiry is a huge part of the work that we do, and so relevant to like how we develop different frames for things. And so again, part of what we're offering, and we're a part of many other beings on some part of the journey of like offering, like, wow, okay, like, are you going to keep letting the amorphous other out there, the big other, tell you how you're supposed to do economy and jobs and healing and all of these things? And like, I'm not sure it's really working for anyone. I'm thinking about the healthcare system right now. Yeah, so it's this very relational, simple, like just human basic thing. Like I feel like a kid when I'm like, can't we just figure out a different, better way to do this together? Right? Rather than that. And I absolutely honor that it's really challenging to unhook. And so in my personal work, I've come to a place where it's like, there are things that aren't for the one to do alone. Like I really got as far as I could, having been cut off from my, my most generative relationships with colleagues and people I was working with in different ways in relationship on the land with. And then it's like, not only is my body not able to do so many things that I did, but without the relationships, they don't make any sense. And I'm sitting here like I'm an arm that just got cut off from the rest of the body. So I know a lot of people experience that ongoingly or at times in their lives. And so that survival fear is so intense that people might, cling to something or say yes to something or invest in things without having the sense that they could pause or the safety to pause and say, is this really serving life? So I want to invite those inquiry processes for people. And I feel like it's really tender, like it's so transformative to be like, and we could talk about it politically, we could talk about all these different ways, but I just want to talk about like the human animal experiencing like kind of waking up to be like, wow, this really isn't working, and it's not working for any of us. And I'm not sure how to change it. I definitely don't know what I can do as an individual. So we've come a long way in looking at those questions, me and my own practice and the network too. And we have a lot of answers and we have next things we want to try and experiment with. And they're not just like, oh, I'm trying an experiment. They are really like grounded next things that we're trying, that we're investing deeply in, and that we need to both protect and nurture and connect with others around, because they're things that we can't do alone. And that's true also of all of our, for example, the situation of each of our core organizers, right? Like there's specific investment and connection that's needed to enable each of us to do our work. So here we are kind of circling, coming full circle with like, I'm doing a farm stand because I need resources I need to enable my own recovery, and my own recovery includes the vocational rehabilitation, and it includes the work, the gift, the medicine that I'm bringing to the world. And I think that's true of every single person, that they bring medicine and they bring gifts, and that may be very covered over, no matter what your privilege intersections are. Or it may be something that is kind of getting trafficked in some way rather than being actually sustainable in the vital life energy flow and relationships that, are possible. This is possible. It's possible to do different, better, beautiful things that actually work better for life. We have to say, like, it's an interesting kind of risk to say, I'm going to turn my focus a little bit more. I'm even just going to like, is this even safe to go and explore? Or do I have to cling to what I already know, even though parts of us are probably like screaming for freedom in certain ways. I know that's true for so many people. So this is a liberatory process in that way too.
I think that in terms of what we're looking forward to, we know that there are going to be, particularly, I think Mondays and Fridays, we're going to have more intuitive care farm stands. And I don't think we've decided if farm stand should have a space between farm and stand or not. I like it both ways. I think I'm going to keep spelling it both ways sometimes.
I like it in all caps. I like it in all caps. I like it as one word personally.
And I think that there are so many beautiful pieces to bring into this. So we just really want to invite people to keep coming to find us. Come to www.intuitivepublicradio.network. And you can follow us on social media so that you'll see notifications. So you can come hang out with us at the Intuitive Care Farm Stand. And we'll just unfold these miracles together, because all of this is full of miracles. It's been amazing to experience the journey, the story of all of this.
Oh, we're still here and we get to try to do more.
Well, something's going to happen. We don't know what it is, but we managed to be here today. So Johanna, I know it's a massive endeavor for you to get here and do this with us, and it's been a massive endeavor for me.
I know it has.
Especially.
I know it has. I'm so glad. I'm so grateful.
I'm really encouraged, and I'm really looking forward to our next broadcasts. We're doing really great, and thank you to everyone who is tuning in to comment and to share with us privately, and to be part of the groups in the network. Let's keep going.
Yes, we'll see you again soon. Thank you so much, Megan Elizabeth. I'm so thrilled we got to do this. We made it. We did it. Yay. We got to talk about these things, and there'll be more probably.
There's going to be something. We're going to find out what it is.
Hopefully going to be something.
All right. We'll see y'all soon.